The self that learned to disappear. A transmission by Starling. Somewhere along the way, you learned that becoming smaller felt safer than being fully seen. Maybe it happened quietly, through criticism, comparison, rejection, embarrassment, fear, or the subtle feeling that being too visible somehow came with consequences. So you adapted. You became quieter, more careful, more agreeable, more emotionally guarded. You learned how to read the room before speaking, how to soften yourself before someone else could reject you, how to hide parts of yourself in order to preserve connection, approval, or safety. And after enough years, the adaptation no longer felt like adaptation. It felt like identity. This is just who I am. But what if it isn't? What if many of the things you believe about yourself were never absolute truths, but survival strategies? What if your nervous system learned smaller is safer, and over time, you began living inside that belief so long that it started feeling natural? Because the nervous system often mistakes familiarity for truth. Even pain can begin feeling normal when you have carried it long enough. Even shrinking can feel safe when it is all you have practiced. Even emotional exhaustion can feel familiar enough that freedom itself begins feeling uncomfortable. And that is important to understand, because sometimes people begin healing and then panic when authenticity feels unfamiliar. They think, this feels uncomfortable, maybe it's wrong. But often it feels uncomfortable simply because the nervous system has never lived there before. Freedom can feel terrifying when survival became identity. Children do not question the emotional atmosphere they are raised inside of. They absorb it, internalize it, build identities around it, and then spend years believing, this is me. When often, it is conditioning layered over the authentic self. Maybe somewhere along the way you learned, don't be too loud, don't be too emotional, don't disappoint people, what will others think? Stay out of the way, be perfect, earn your place, don't make anyone uncomfortable. And slowly, without even noticing it, you began disappearing from yourself. Not because you were weak, not because you were broken, but because adaptation once protected you. That matters. The nervous system does not create these patterns to punish you. It creates them to help you survive emotionally. And sometimes people are not actually holding on to the wound. They are holding on to the survival strategy attached to it. Because at one time, it worked. It kept you safe, accepted, connected, invisible enough to avoid pain. But survival is not the same thing as living. And eventually something inside of you begins whispering, there has to be more than this. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to feel alive again. I want to breathe. That whisper matters too, because healing is not becoming someone new. It is remembering the self that was always there beneath the fear, the joyful self, the creative self, the visible self, the free self, the self that did not actually want to dominate the room, only feel safe enough to exist inside of it. You were never asking to become superior. You were never asking to become more important than everyone else. You were simply longing for permission to exist fully without fear. And perhaps that is one of the deepest human wounds of all. So many people spend their lives auditioning for the right to exist, trying to earn love, worthiness, approval, belonging, visibility, and permission to take up space. But your humanity was never something you were meant to earn. And perhaps that is why liberation feels so emotional when it finally arrives, because the nervous system realizes, I no longer have to disappear in order to survive. That realization changes everything. You begin separating what was learned from who you truly are, and suddenly the walls start cracking, the labels loosen, the old stories stop feeling absolute, the cage door slowly opens, and through those cracks, your authentic self begins breathing again. Not because you finally became worthy of being seen, but because you always were. You were never required to earn your humanity in the first place.